Hello, pickle friends. Welcome back to Inside the Pickle Jar, the podcast for neurodivergent adults and everyone who loves and supports them. Today's conversation is part two of last week's conversation. Again, as I stated in the beginning of the first part, when I introduced my guest, this is a conversation that I'm very interested in, and it actually inspired me to start getting on top of my own long-term care plan and my estate planning. It touches something that most of us in the neurodivergent community think about, but we really don't ever talk about it. The question is, what happens to the people we love when we can't be there for them anymore? And I know that for parents of children with level 2 autism, PDD, NOS, maybe your child has a health issue or a concern, any type of neurodivergent diagnosis where your child can't live on their own and you're the primary caregiver and primary support system. That question is always like top of mind. And you're caregiving for them today, you're doing something that takes all that you have, and then in the back of your mind is this other question that is really even harder to face. What is the plan for when I can't do this anymore? So I'm bringing back, or this is the part two of my guest I had on Raymond Lavine, and he is the principal at Lavine LTC Benefits. And he's also written a book called Empathy and Understanding in Business. You can find it on Amazon. He has helped tons of people, individuals, families, businesses, all prepare for long-term care. And his path was shaped by his own family story. He grew up as the son of immigrants who fled persecution, served in Vietnam. He watched his mother, who was an attorney, rely on her long-term care plan for 18 years. And he really does know firsthand what thoughtful planning protects and what its absence costs. What I really love about Raymond's approach is that he resists the idea that planning is only for the wealthy, or only for the old, or only for people whose lives look a certain way. He believes planning is how you protect dignity, your own and the people you love. So this conversation is for every caregiver who has been putting off that very hard question. This isn't about products or policies. It's really about people. It's about families, what it means to love someone well into an uncertain future. We talk about, on this part two, 5 steps that you can take, these baby incremental steps that you can take to get started on the journey of a long-term health plan, especially if you're a caregiver for someone who can't even maybe live independently. I hope you enjoy this episode. I'm going to pick up with a question from me to Raymond, and he will carry it from there. Thanks so much. Well, you bring up
Well,
a good point,
yeah,
because I was going to ask you, because you've said that you've always said that your approach resists that narrative that a long-term care planning is only for the wealthy, and you've talked a lot about how much money you have or not have. So I just want to ask, in the context of my audience, because a lot of families caring for neurodivergent children are already pretty stretched thin, and they're paying for therapies and specialists and supports that insurance doesn't always cover. What does planning look like for families who don't feel like they have anything left to plan with?
interesting. The answer is I don't know. All the specific is that in some ways you do. You deal with it with what you have, and that the people that you're talk to as advisors, whether it's social services or an attorney, or if you have a financial or wealth advisor, is to ask them what thoughts they have, what things can they do to make it work. And you're right. Each family is a particular template. It isn't just, hi, do this. It'll be right. You got to adjust it. It's like, getting in your car and adjusting your seat. Now, I'm so old, I remember seats went forward and seats went back. Now, you have the 42, different positions you can do your car seat. So in some ways that's good. Is that you have, there are ways, or if you don't have, then find out in advance what social services are available. Or the other thing is what family is available, who might be able to take over, or help, or what friends have those kind of. But you got to think about those things in advance and talk to
Mhm.
people and say, look, I got the situation, or ask other, other families and say, look, we're in the city. What are you doing? In order to get ideas and find out what's working, what's working for them. But also, be cautious too. Just because if you ask somebody, say, oh, this is terrible, and the social services are awful. Well, there may be reasons, like maybe you call them up and you annoyed them so that they're not going to be as helpful. I mean, there are always exceptions to it. There's always another story. So don't, just because somebody says, this is good, or usually I've had a adverse experience. You can call it a negative. I'll be kind. I'll say adverse experience is then to say, all right, I've heard this opinion. Let me just talk to some other people in order to get, maybe somebody else will have something different. Maybe they'll say, provide an idea, or maybe they'll say, gee, I never thought about it that way.
Yeah. Yeah. Mm. Well, so you've helped thousands of families. And after all, everyone that you've helped, what's the thing that keeps you up at night? What are you seeing happen to families that you feel most urgently needs to change?
Well, it wa- well, I mean, probably the easy is that it's all the people that I think should have a plan that don't. You know,
Mhm.
because eventually something will happen. You just never know when. We always think of, caregiving as, us, older people. It isn't. It's the spectrum, just like in autism. It's the spectrum. Do you really think people in their 20s or 30s don't have accidents or illnesses or even cognitive?
Mhm.
So, but we always think of, it's being old. Of course, here's the other stretch too, is that in America, we're living longer. We're not necessarily healthier, but we're living longer. Well, the longer you live, then you have other issues because what are is it you know how long is your money going to last? Is it set up? Can it last into your 80s? Can it last into your 90s? Because more people are living into 70, 80s, 90s, even to their centenarians. So, how long is your money going to hold out? It's all, it's also, where you live, your cost of living. It depends on, do you live in a community of people that can help you? And there are communities whether it's rural community or even an urban community or even a suburban community, it's what is your community set up where maybe people can help you? And that's fine too.
Mhm.
There are a lot of things that it can work if people talk about it, and that's the other thing too, Tonya, that people don't want to talk about it. They don't want to talk about I mean, they'll talk about we what they don't like or what doesn't work in daily thing. But I think that if you have people that you really care about, I mean, really your friend is to say, look, I'm really concerned about what will happen if I have a child or children, their neurodiversity, what to do. Do you have some idea? And so these are things that people, you need to have the authentic discussion about it with people that matter. You don't just talk about it with everybody. You don't go into a restaurant. Hey, anybody have ideas of how to help me? Not a good idea, because it's like in that movie. It's up close and it's personal.
Yeah, exactly. So, okay, so for the parent listening right now who has a child with significant support needs and hasn't started planning, who knows they should, but they keep putting it off, what do you want them to know? Not what they should do. What do you want them to know?
What do I want them to know? How can I have a sense of urgency? You've got to have a sense of urgency. And, here's something else too. And I used to, when you're doing planning, what's so much fun about, it's like, have you cleaned out, reorganized a drawer or your dresser lately, or your closet? Have you done that
Sure.
lately?
Yeah,
Was it
sure.
fun?
Well, only kind of, that I knew it would be clean, right? And then I could find things later. It was helping me for my future self.
And how long did it take you, to decide whether you're organizing your drawer or your closet? How long did it take you to say, I know this is an issue, to actually do something about it?
Well, I'm so good at procrastinating. Yeah, yeah,
Yeah,
exactly. So,
but
because it always seems to take more time. I'm always miscalculating how much time it will take. It doesn't take me maybe a day, maybe a weekend. to clean that closet or rearrange that drawer, but it's not ever as painful as I thought it was going to be. And it never takes as much time as I thought it would. And I always say, why didn't I do this sooner?
Exactly.
Which is probably your point, right?
That's my point. Is
Yep.
that, it may not be fun, but, or if you have people to help you, if you have, anytime somebody can help you organize something, it's wonderful. So if you have, the first thing is to find out, what, or is to find people or find a person that, meets your needs. Do you like them? Do they have experience with this? So that, and then they can give you, ideas of, how to do this. And the other thing is that you do it incrementally. You don't have to do this on a Friday. Do it incrementally, but first find the people that you want to work with and will work with you and understand the situation. And
I do believe in baby steps. And so maybe you can talk a little bit about what would be the first 5 baby steps that someone would take. You said something about finding an attorney or interviewing attorneys or getting a list. Like what are the top 5 baby steps in starting a long-term care plan?
Well, first thing is with the family is have the family, if you have the family and you can talk to each other, and that's a big if. Can you talk to each other? Because families are a drama too. Of some people, family is a word, a definition, but you talk about the subplot of, do you get along? Do you talk to each other? Who's annoyed whom? Who's angry at whom? Who has some beef with it? So if you ask them for something, you say, well, no, I won't do it because, you didn't do this, or you owe me money, or whatever it may be. So the first thing is the family has got to have a conversation about it, is to say, look, it's not that we're going to die. Everybody knows that. And you certainly talk to your kids about it, even if they're on the spectrum, to say, look, if I'm not here, what would you like to happen? How would you like to live? Where would you like to live? Are there people that you like that maybe you might want to live with? Have that conversation with them as best you can. Now, if you don't, if there's, is it you can hire a gerontologist. You can people involved in social services, people in psychologists. People that have that kind of experience, people always say it's intervention, but it's people that can help with the conversation and bring up things to say, gee, I never thought about it that way, or now I understand. Sometimes you need intermediaries to kind of,
right. A facilitator, right?
That's fine too. But somebody that has those kind of family skills, and they are out there. Or if you don't, contact me, and I know people that can have that conversation, because a lot of times also people with they also have health needs, and so it isn't just your brain. It's that that they have medical needs that also need attending. And those are also other things too, is that, are you organized where families know the medications, and this caregiving is just it's like an umbrella, but then there are all the things under the umbrella that you find out, what's going on with this caregiving. So have the family conversation if you can. Ask your kids, what they would like. Listen to their opinions, because they will tell you. They will certainly have a point of view, rather than, hi, we've decided for you. I mean, did you like that? I never liked that. We've decided for you. We think this is the best one. Gee, that's so wonderful. Thank you for thinking about me and not even asking me what I thought. Is that you've decided what it is that I should do. You'd be surprised how much more cooperative people will be if you ask them for their opinion or their ideas, and to say, how can we incorporate this where, that you'll buy into this, or that you'll feel comfortable. I don't know if anybody in any culture that says, I love being in an uncomfortable situation, and I love it when people are telling me what to do. I mean, or that people ignore, my thoughts and fear. I love that. It's, people want people want to be involved. People, I have three things when I talk about care is that people don't want to feel invisible. The second is that people want attention. You know anybody that doesn't want attention? I don't, including me. And the other thing, and this is the big whammy, is nobody. And I don't care, if you're the Pope or a potentate or something, is that nobody. If you, when you're in a situation where you feel vulnerable, and you'll know it, that when you're feeling vulnerable. Most people, actually everyone, does not like to feel vulnerable. And it doesn't matter, who you are, but certainly in the neurodiversity, they're feeling vulnerable. They really do, because in some way, they know, that they need help, but they're not always sure how to express it. So, it's you got to bring it. If you don't have, people that you can consult, is find them, and have that conversation and talk to the family, find out things. And then also, and then the attorney, have your financial team, whatever it may be, or if you like your bank or your banker branches, I'm so old. I remember when bank branches used to have, autonomy and power. Now they don't. It's you go in and everything else is off somewhere with people that you don't know and don't know you on a telephone line or a text line. So that's hard. That's more difficult. Also find out, what social services are in your area. What is your state? What is your local area? What do they have available? And if you don't, and in the neurodiversity community or any community, if you're into some activity, people will always know somebody. I'll give you, if people are helping you, with home improvements to your home, it's astonishing how they know so many. If you say, "Do you know such and such that does this?" They have networks, and so this is what you also need to do: is find out in your network, who has these situations, who you can have the conversation. And again, my caveat is, somebody says, "Well, I have this lousy situation." Well, look, relationships are not always fun, but people still keep trying. It's astonishing. You have a disappointment. You can either say, "No, I give up, and I'll live the single life." That's fair enough. But some people say, "No, I'll keep trying till I find what I'm looking for." And so.
Right.
This is, my recommendation is that if you get the caveat of it didn't work or was a horrible idea, then that person is not, you'd say thank you for the information or thank you for your idea. Keep looking until you find that situation that says, and you'll know it. You say, "This is now I get it," or this is what I'm looking for. And
Yeah.
and is any of this easy? No. Is any of it fun? Not particularly. But if it's something that you need to do, I'll tell you where you then feel good is when you find the right situation. It's like, having the nice glass of water because you're thirsty, or you have
Yeah.
the nice hamburger that's juicy and say, "Yeah, that's what I wanted." And these are the things that, and you need to work on it, but you don't need to always, you don't have to have everything done in one day. Is that you just need to incrementally, as you said, look for those situations, and then eventually you probably will find it. There's, is it guaranteed? No, but I'm pretty sure that if you keep looking, you'll find what I'm old enough to know. Eventually, you'll find what you're looking for. You just got to keep looking.
Yeah. Well, it sounds too like the best beginning place is to plan the plan, right? So you said number one, have the conversation with your family and talk to your kids and see what they want to do. It's kind of the same conversation. Then there's also like reaching out to your network of people, like who else might have been in this situation or a similar situation. Maybe it's not that they have neurodivergent kids. Maybe they have geriatric parents that have also needed long-term care. So reaching out and reaching out to your financial institutions and say who are good financial planners within the people that you know and trust that can advise you. And then also ask for references so you can go interview those people, right? Those seem like the big 5 things that you can start with. But if you don't start doing that today and asking those questions, like maybe the 6th thing is give yourself a deadline to just do those 5 things, is to plan your plan.
Whether it's deadline or urgency, But I'll tell you what will is that you'll be more motivated if you find people that you like and understand the situation. You're more motivated. There's a term paradox of choice. Of course, now with the internet and all, I mean, you have you have an infinite paradox of choice. And what is difficult for, all of us is that too many choices, too many decisions. What will happen is you'll go through either meltdown or just say, I can't deal with this. But if you have, a few choices of people that, then you're more likely to move along. And also that, hopefully if they care enough that they will encourage you. Because I've had people that have waited years before they'll start the conversation with me and they'll wait for years. And then something will happen. They'll say, okay, now I'm ready to have the conversation. And then it's easier. But sometimes it takes a while for people to get there.
Yeah.
And some are more, urgent about it than others. And so what we as, the advisors, call it the salespeople, however you want to, label me, is that, if I think that you're worthwhile, I will, periodically, I will say, it seems like, it might be a good time or maybe a good time to have the conversation. I don't say you need to do this now. But when the people call me, they've had a health issue or they're at that point where they know somebody. And sometimes, it is a little bit too late. The other thing I say is, look, there's certain things that if you don't do it sooner, it gets more expensive. It just does.
Good point.
Or your health, you just never know when the warning light goes on. And when it does, that's when it gets your attention. And then you say, but I want this. It's harder to get. Don't believe me? Don't pay. Have some late payments, and then try for the loan, and then see what happens. And say, yeah, we'll do it, but rather than at 20%, we'll do it at 37%. We'll give you but it's that it will cost you. I always say, if you want the best time to do something is when you don't need it, whether it's a loan or when you don't need it. That's ask for everything.
Mhm.
And it's the same, for saving for retirement and investing. The best time is to say, look, I'm doing this, I'm putting money in, I have advisors, or however whatever level of money. And then, if you start off with, the money market and the savings plan, eventually you get into CDs, maybe then CDs get into mutual funds or individual stocks, or if you know how to do a cryptocurrency or gold or stuff,
Yeah.
you can diversify if you have enough funds, and then either somebody is helping you advising. So you just do things in incremental, but you got to get into the habit. There's a book that I recommend to myself. It's called The Power of Habit by Charles Duhigg. And he gives all these examples of, people that have all kinds of, money issues, addiction issues, health issues, is it stories of how they got themselves out of the situation because they got into the habit. And it's the
Yeah.
same, the neurodiversity, or is it, you got to get into it. If you want something to good things to happen in your life, you got to get in the habit. You just got to
Yeah.
get. But you'll say, but you got to do it incrementally. You don't just say, get up in the morning and say, I'm going to change my habits. Not so simple. Not so.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's like
Well,
somebody's.
I'm a long distance runner, and you don't wake up one day and decide to go run a marathon if you haven't like done the incremental things first.
That's true, and trust me, if you haven't trained for it, you might get to the curb, and then hopefully you don't fall over because 26 miles or a half marathon, 13 miles. Yeah, it's not easy. It's not easy to do. You're right. I mean, you have to train for it. You got to you got to build it up, and then when you have this. Then it's actually can be fun. It can be fun to say, look, I have this plan and we're working on it, and then we'll make some adjustments. And if you don't like the term fun, oh, how about this? At least it will be tolerable, because when something happens, I'll give you an example. I'm so old. I remember, before you had call boxes where you could call when your car broke down, because when your car broke down, you put out the flares. I remember that, we carried flares, and then, hopefully, somebody would come by. Then they had call boxes. Now, you have your phone, but your best situation, of course, is you have your phone. Where I'm going with this is that you, if you have, subscriptions to things, whether it's the Costco's or the AAA's, that you never know when something, when the flashing light or the emergency light, or just something isn't working, where you can work yourself out of it. You feel your amygdala and your endorphins feel much better when you say,
Mhm.
"Look, if I'm in this situation, I know that I have help to get, I have people that will help me to get out of this, because I might be overwhelmed and tired and frustrated, that I can make the call and say, I need help." And there's nothing wrong with saying I need help.
Well, believe it or not, you leading right into my last question. We're at the end of our hour-long conversation. Time has gone by really fast. I have one last question for you. Where can people find you and your work? And what's the best first step for someone who wants to start planning but doesn't know where to begin? We've kind of already talked about that, but as it relates to starting a conversation with you, maybe you showed up in one of their 5 steps. How do people find you and reach out?
Before I do that, we talk about, the 5 steps. When you deal with musicians, it's got to be in the 90% of, especially professional musicians. Most of them have had an addiction issue. And
Mm.
so, they're going through a lot of stuff. So when we have musical events at our house, we're very careful about, beveraging, and, where the beverages are, because if you have an addiction issue, it's you got to be careful. We're aware of that, and people that do have that, are appreciative that we say, look, yeah, the alcohol beverages are here, but the other beverages, are here, and it's just as good and just as much fun, and we're not going to make you feel guilty about it. But the way that you can find me is my website, Lavine LTCINS .com. And if you go there, there are two things. You can have, the usual web portal stuff. But if you want to find, but go to the top left, and there's a subscription that I have, where you can put in your lifestyle information to find out, what your longevity might be. And then also, what the costs of care would be. And then, you can sort of make some determination. Do I have really enough assets that I could do it myself, which is doubtful, no matter what it is? Or do I need, additional insurance or something in order to make up for it? So it'll give you an idea of, that. In the lower right, you can look at 3 dots. You can type in information, rather than have the 42 frequently asked questions that never really precisely answer. You can put in, you can even put in, who's Raymond Lavine? Anyway, but you can ask those questions, and it will give you ideas of, how to think about it. And then it has, all the other, has other useful information. Or you can call me, area code 253-275-6091. Now, I'm in Washington State, which is Pacific time, but, and I'm licensed in most of the Western states. But if, you're someplace else and you have a question or issue, call me, and depending what it is, and if I know people that I can say, I'll recommend, these people, or this situation. So, it's my website, my phone. You can also find me on social media. Just type in, Raymond Lavine, and I'll show up somewhere.
Awesome. Well, and for all of you out there that are listening, if you do not have a long-term care plan, this is your reminder. Let this be a sign to you that you probably need to start working on it, or go back to working on it where you left off. If you liked this episode, know someone who needs to hear it, please subscribe, like, share it to everyone. And I appreciate all my pickle friends for being on, listening to the podcast. Thank you, Raymond, for coming on and talking with us about how critical this is for everyone, but particularly those in the neurodivergent community. And I hope maybe we'll have you again sometime.
It would be my pleasure. Anytime, any place, anywhere. Who said that? Did somebody say that? But anyway, I still took it. Anytime, any place, anywhere, I'd be happy to come back.
Great. Thanks so much.